Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to sift through the research you provide and pull out the clearest, most actionable insights.
And this time, you've given us quite a stack. It's a really interesting collection of English conversation transcripts,
Yeah.
all aimed at A1, A2 learners.
Yeah, the real foundational stuff. Ordering things, asking for help, the conversations that actually get you through the day when you're starting out or traveling.
It's crucial material because, honestly, this is where learners often hit a wall, isn't it? They might know words, but stringing them together naturally, that's different.
Exactly. So our mission today is pretty straightforward. We're not just going to list examples from these role plays.
No, we need to go deeper.
We're digging for the core rules, the, let's say, shortcuts that take someone from just giving a basic answer to sounding, well, confident, polite, friendly even.
Making them sound like a comfortable traveler, someone who navigates conversations easily rather than, a tourist just reading lines.
Precisely. And if we had to boil down everything in these sources, all these conversations, to just one key takeaway.
I think it would have to be this. Natural, effective English really hinges on two main things. First, politeness is non-negotiable. Absolutely key.
Okay, politeness. Got it. And second,
Second, it's about adding just a little bit extra, a bit more detail than the absolute minimum.
that's interesting. A little bit extra, because I think a lot of learners assume shorter is better, maybe safer.
Well, yeah, it feels safer perhaps, but shorter can often come across as abrupt. Or even a bit rude sometimes.
Right, like you're cutting the conversation short.
Exactly. Think about a simple greeting. Someone asks, "How are you doing today?" If you just say, "Fine," full stop.
Yeah, it just hangs there. Awkward.
It really does. It kind of signals you're not interested or maybe you're in a hurry. It shuts down the interaction.
But the examples in our sources show a different approach. The more natural, friendly way is something like, I'm doing well, thank you. I'm here to buy some vegetables. What about you?
See, that little addition, "I am here to buy some vegetables," it completely changes the dynamic.
How so?
Well, you've given the other person something to respond to, haven't you? You've added a touch of personality, moved beyond just a basic exchange. You've opened a door.
And we saw this pattern again and again, like when people talked about their weekend plans.
Oh, yeah, that was a clear one.
The short, safe answer is just, it was good, thank you. Fine, but meh.
But pretty much a conversation killer.
Right. Whereas the more engaging reply, the one that actually makes someone want to keep talking to you, is more like, it was good, thank you. My husband and I visited a new cafe near our house, and we really enjoyed the food.
Instantly better. You've shared something personal, something concrete. It gives the other person something to latch onto. Oh, which cafe or what kind of food?
You've dropped a little conversational anchor, as you say.
Exactly. And this idea of adding clear detail, it becomes even more important when the stakes are a bit higher than just casual chat.
You mean like practical situations?
Yes, think about efficiency and clarity. Take Anna going to the doctor in one of the transcripts. She could have just said, "I feel unwell," which is true, but not very helpful.
It's big.
Very vague. But instead, she says, "I have had a headache since yesterday, and I feel very tired." Much better, right?
Yeah, straight to the point.
Yeah.
It gives the doctor useful information immediately.
Yeah.
Cuts down on wasted time.
Precisely. Or look at Sophia, the example of the job interview introduction.
Right. She didn't just say, I am a teacher.
No, that's just a label. Her actual response was, let me check. "My name is Sophia, and I have 5 years of experience as a teacher. I enjoy helping people learn."
Much more professional, clear, positive, shows some experience and enthusiasm.
It demonstrates confidence, not just basic identification. It's about presenting yourself effectively.
And I noticed another angle on detail. It wasn't just about sharing information, but also confirming you've understood information.
Ah, you're thinking of Mark getting directions.
Yes, he repeated them back. So I go straight, then turn left at the traffic light, and the station is on the right.
That's such a great technique for a learner.
Why is it so effective?
Well, firstly, it confirms he actually heard and processed the directions correctly, reduces the chance of getting lost. But secondly, psychologically, it makes him sound much more confident and assured, like he's got it under control.
Okay, so detail is key for personality, efficiency, and confirming understanding.
Absolutely. And that links perfectly to the other pillar we mentioned, the mechanics of politeness.
Right. If detail adds personality, politeness, what does that do?
It basically elevates your communication. It's a difference between sounding demanding or abrupt and sounding professional or simply, well, pleasant to interact with.
And the sources really hammered home certain phrases, didn't they? Like, why can a learner almost never just say, give me the chicken?
Huh. Yes, because it's an imperative, it's a command, and unless you're in a very specific informal situation, maybe with close friends, it just sounds rude.
It implies authority you don't have in that context.
Exactly. The subtle but crucial difference between give me and I would like is enormous. One asserts, the other politely requests.
So I would like becomes the sort of universal key for beginners in these transactional situations.
Pretty much. It's the go-to phrase. It's polite, clear, and works almost everywhere. You cannot overuse I would like when you're starting out.
We saw it in emails, too, like the example of needing to cancel a meeting. You can't just write, I cannot come tomorrow.
Definitely not in a professional context. The sources showed the proper framing. Dear sir, I am sorry, but I cannot attend the meeting tomorrow. Start with politeness. State the fact then.
Offer a solution. Could we arrange another time this week? Using that conditional could.
Yes, the apology, the statement, and the polite conditional suggestion for a resolution. That's the structure.
Okay, so if a listener takes just a few phrases away from this section for maximum impact, what should they be?
I'd say it's a power trio. First, I would like for making requests. Second, could we please or could you please for asking for things or actions.
That please is important.
Essential. And third, the classic opener for getting attention or asking for help. Excuse me.
I would like. Could we please? And, excuse me.
Nail those. And you've unlocked a huge percentage of necessary daily interactions. We see them everywhere in the source material.
Ordering food?
Could we pay by card?
Asking for help in a shop or library?
Excuse me, could you help me find a book about history? It's that combination of polite opening and the could you request.
Right. Mastering these short, almost formulaic phrases seems like a massive confidence booster.
It is. It allows you to navigate potentially tricky situations smoothly without causing friction.
Okay, so we've got the core principles.
Yeah.
Add a bit of detail, be relentlessly polite, using key phrases like, I would like and could you please?
Exactly. The what and the how.
Now let's dive into the where. The bulk of these transcripts were practical role plays. Let's unpack the most common scenarios.
Sounds good. Where should we start? Commerce and shopping seems like a big one.
Definitely. Restaurants, cafes, shops, supermarkets. These are daily hurdles for learners.
And the language is transactional, yes, but always needs that layer of politeness. In a restaurant, it's almost scripted.
I would like the grilled chicken with rice, please. Always, I would like. Always, please.
Yep. And then if you need something extra later, maybe more drinks.
It shifts slightly, doesn't it, to the conditional request.
Yeah.
Could we please have 2 cups of tea?
Perfect.
Okay.
Could we, making it a polite suggestion, plus the essential please?
And this template holds up even in, say, a clothes shop.
Pretty much. You need to get someone's attention first, so.
Excuse me.
Right. Then the question, do you have this jacket in a medium size? It's a direct question, but framed politely.
Even sending a letter at the post office followed this pattern. Sarah's example was good.
Yes. Good morning, polite opening. I would like to send this letter to New York. Clear request using I would like. How much will it cost? Direct question for information.
It's assertive. She knows what she wants, but the politeness wraps around it.
That's a really important distinction. You can be direct about your needs, absolutely. You just need the right social packaging, the right phrasing.
Okay, what about travel and transport?
Right.
Buying tickets, checking in. These can feel quite high pressure.
They can, but the same rules apply. Politeness and clarity are key. Buying a bus ticket.
Simple. I would like 1 ticket, please.
Train tickets to a specific place.
I would like 2 tickets to Manchester, please. Again,
Yeah.
I would like it doing all the heavy lifting.
It really is. And when booking something like a hotel room,
Detail becomes crucial again alongside politeness. You wouldn't just say, I want a room.
no, it's I would like to book a room for 2 nights, and then providing the specific dates from the 12th to the 14th of October. Clarity prevents problems later.
Makes sense. And the last big category was health and appointments.
Yes, and here precision is vital, along with that polite frame, making a doctor's appointment over the phone.
Hello, I would like to make an appointment with Dr. Smith. Clear, polite request.
And at the pharmacy, asking for advice. I need some vitamins. State the need, then the polite request. Could you recommend something?
Again, that could use structure.
Yeah.
It respects the pharmacist's expertise while clearly stating your need.
Exactly. The language is direct when it needs to be about symptoms or needs, but it always maintains that respectful, polite interaction.
So all these examples focus on getting things done, the necessary transactions,
Mm.
buying things,
Mm.
booking things, getting help.
Which is the foundation, of course. You need to be able to do those things.
But true language skill goes beyond just transactions, right? It's about connecting, expressing opinions, handling social situations. Did the sources touch on that?
Oh, definitely. That's where it gets really interesting. The conversation comparing village life and city life stood out.
Yeah, that was quite detailed. What did it show us?
It showed how learners can start using language to express more nuanced ideas, preferences, and justifications, not just simple needs.
They weren't just stating facts like the village is quiet.
No, they were using comparative structures, like the village is more peaceful or closer to nature. The city has more opportunities, but is also more crowded or more polluted. That more than structure is key for comparison.
And they were connecting ideas, weren't they?
Right.
Explaining why they felt a certain way.
Yes, that's the crucial step up, moving from stating a preference to justifying it, using words like because. I prefer the village because it's more peaceful and the people are friendlier.
So the takeaway for a learner isn't about deciding if city or village is better.
Not at all. It's about learning how to articulate your personal priorities using those comparative structures and connecting phrases. That's how you have a real discussion.
And even simple small talk relies on some of these principles.
Absolutely. Meeting new neighbors. The example was, my name is Thomas. I just moved here with my wife and 2 children. Simple details, politely shared.
Or that classic park bench small talk. It is a beautiful day, isn't it?
That little tag question, isn't it? Invites a simple agreement. It's a low-effort way to initiate contact. Politeness in action.
I was also really struck by the transcript about the breakup. Handling someone's distress.
Yes, that requires a different kind of language. Empathy.
And the sources highlighted some key phrases for that, didn't they? Things you can say even if your grammar isn't perfect.
Exactly. Fixed expressions that convey care. Things like, I'm sorry to hear that, or that must be difficult. Simple, but powerful.
And the comforting thought at the end, time heals all wounds.
These are like social first aid phrases. They allow a learner to navigate a genuinely difficult, sensitive situation with grace, showing their ability goes beyond just ordering things.
Okay, this is all incredibly useful. We have the core idea, politeness plus detail, and we've seen how it applies in transactions and even basic social conversations.
Right.
So the final piece is the how. How does a learner actually build this skill and, maybe more importantly, the confidence to put this all into practice? What did the sources say about the learning process itself?
Well, the most consistent advice was refreshingly simple. You just have to do it. The best way to get better at speaking is to speak.
Easier said than done sometimes, though. That can be intimidating.
It absolutely can. But the sources offered a bridge. Visualization.
Visualization. Tell me more about that. How does it work?
It means before you even go into the situation, you practice it vividly in your mind. Don't just read the dialogue. Imagine the place, the cafe, the counter, the person you'll talk to.
So create the scene mentally.
Yes. Picture the menu, maybe the noise, what you need to say. If you mentally rehearse the situation, the words supposedly come out more easily when you're actually there. It prepared your brain for the context.
Interesting, like a mental dry run.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And another point they stressed was finding a comfortable pace.
Pace, as in how fast you speak.
Exactly. It's not just about saying the right words. Speaking too fast because you're nervous or too slow because you're unsure can both hinder communication. You need to find a natural, comfortable rhythm.
Makes sense. Flow is important.
And then there was one really practical, maybe slightly scary piece of advice for building confidence.
Oh, what was that?
Recording yourself speaking.
Ooh, yeah. A lot of people hate hearing their own voice.
I know, it feels awkward at first, but the sources strongly suggested that if you push past that initial discomfort, the payoff is huge.
What's the payoff?
2 things, mainly. First, confidence. You might actually realize you sound better, your English is clearer than you thought. Hearing yourself can be surprisingly positive.
Okay, a potential confidence boost. What's the second benefit?
Pronunciation, big time. One source describes speaking a foreign language as a physical workout for your mouth.
Huh, I like that.
Me too.
Hmm.
And recording yourself lets you actually hear how that workout is going. You can catch awkward phrasing or mispronunciations, those physical aspects of speech, much more easily than just thinking about it. It helps you fine-tune the mechanics.
So listen, practice mentally, find your pace,
Yeah.
and maybe brave the record button.
That seems to be the toolkit the sources recommend.
This has been a really insightful deep dive. It feels like the path to sounding more natural isn't about learning thousands of new words necessarily.
Not primarily, no. At this A1, A2 stage, it's more about how you use the language you have.
Embrace politeness. Add that little bit of relevant detail to make it a real interaction, and practice applying it in those key daily situations. Sound like a comfortable traveler, not a struggling tourist.
Exactly. And maybe a final thought to leave people with. Since we've established that adding that small amount of extra detail and using those specific polite phrases signals competence, personality, even professionalism,
Yeah.
well, just consider how much that small, conscious effort might impact your life beyond just getting a coffee. Think about navigating travel more smoothly, making a better impression in initial meetings, maybe even in job contexts down the line. That slight elevation in how you communicate can change perceptions.
That's a powerful point.
Yeah.
How are you going to take that simple lesson, politeness plus a little detail, and use it tomorrow to turn a basic, functional exchange into something more successful, more connected?
Something to think about.
Definitely. Until next time, keep those conversations flowing.